Hello, Reflections viewers. I'm your host, Deontay Brewer. Today, my guest is Professor Curtis Crisler. He is a professor of English at Purdue University, Fort Wayne, formerly IPFW. He's also a noted poet and active in our spoken word community here in Fort Wayne. Let's welcome him as our guest while we reflect with Professor Curtis Crisler. Thanks for watching. Professor Crisler, welcome to Reflections.
Well, thank you for having me. It's so cool to be here.
I'm so honored to have you here, sir. How's your summer?
It's busy. It's busier than I thought it would be. I'm doing, as a matter of fact, right now I'm writing a review for a book for the recent Indiana Poet Laureate. And so I've been doing a lot of reviews, a lot of letters of recommendation. I thought I was going to have like an easy summer.
Right.
It's not. I've been just, and these are things you need to do so that people can get jobs and, know about literature and stuff like that. So that's a part of the job.
So it sounds like you're still working.
Yes.
You're not teaching,
I'm
but
not teaching,
right
but
now, but you're still working.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. As noted in my intro, sir, you are a professor of English. Mm-hmm. English. Did you enjoy your English courses in school?
For the most part, I did. These were the places, English class, that's where you have fiction and literature, and poetry not so much. And it's weird how I became a poet, but fiction, Huck Finn,
yes,
all the stories that we grew up reading. That Samuel L. Clemens, even I go back to the Mike and Jane books. Dick and Jane books.
Yes.
I always remember the one where it was snowing and they got a snow day and they're outside and everybody's outside and they're making snowmen and having snowball fights.
Okay.
And I wanted to be in that illustration.
Okay.
I wanted to be in that story, and some of the teachers were just great in how they told the stories and stuff. So for the most part, all the English teachers were really cool.
So you just mentioned teachers. Was there a favorite course and teacher that sticks out in your memory?
The one he's not actually an English teacher. For the most part, all of the English teachers I learned something from. But the one I can think about, it was in middle school, was my social studies teacher, Mr. Sanchez, and he told the best stories. He would have us, he would have us enthralled in the story so much. And he's talking about Ivan the Terrible and how he's punishing people and things like that. And this is where, the Dracula and stuff comes from and all that kind of thing. And how horrible he was, but and say people would be pleading for their lives and stuff like that, and then somebody would come and say, "I hate you, you dog, you this, you that, you that," and he's spitting in his face and stuff, and he's like, "Let him go," and he would, and we'd just be like, "What?" And so he would have us so enthralled that when the bell rung, you jump, because, or he would come by your desk. He was. And this is something I haven't done. You've had my class, and I'll come. I come by and I'll interact with you and stuff like that. But the classrooms were different then. He would go to each person's desk and he's telling the story, and he'd come and and he'd shake the desk. And he was just great.
Just putting emphasis into the story.
Yes.
Yeah, very interactive with class.
His brother was a biologist or something, and he told us, he was with his brother one time, and he said, like an apple? He said, yeah. He said, want me to wash it off? I said, I don't care. And so he's washing it off, and his brother's actually putting soap on it and scrubbing it with a brush. And he said, what are you doing? He said, you got to get the pesticides off and all this stuff, and then we learned about pesticides and all this kind of stuff. So he really had these real world experiences, bringing the real world and the mythical aspect of legend and stuff together.
Yes. And now, sir, with you being a professor, Mr. Sanchez, have you ever gone back to visit Mr. Sanchez?
No, I haven't, and that's sad because once I started writing poetry, I actually sent a book to my old school and never heard anything from them. And
Okay.
now that school they've closed the school. They tried to turn it into a school of the arts or something like that.
Okay.
But it was weird because it was it was a younger school in the sense of when it was built.
Okay.
But it was more in the white neighborhood of Gary. It's the only white school in Gary.
Okay.
Actually in the suburbs.
Okay. Well, I think Mr. Sanchez would be proud of you.
I
And to
hope
know that
so.
you made
I
a
hope
difference.
so. I do have another teacher, Mrs. Ford, who was a math teacher of mine, and we still keep in touch. And I've always loved her. She's always loved me. When I came back, I would go to her class like everybody does. And to this day, she used to play piano at one of my at the church my mother went to and stuff.
Okay.
And so she's on my Facebook and everything. So she still keeps in touch with me, and she's really proud. And yeah, so I you know, because I never thought I was going to, if you had told me I was going to be a teacher, are you crazy? Yeah. So.
But teachers make a lasting impression. You know, good teachers do on their students. I have teachers that, you know, I often think about, and they fostered such a love of learning. You know, for me, you're one of them, but I have earlier ones, and you just carry their memory, you know, throughout your life. And so teachers are very special people to me. Okay, so what influenced your decision to study creative writing and/or poetry?
Well, when I decided to go to school, I started out in journalism, and I worked for the Communicator for a minute.
Okay.
Well, I did a story. I don't want to say I worked for them. I don't know if I worked for them. I did a story that they would put into the Communicator when we had the Communicator, and I went. It was a prayer breakfast, and they were having a prayer breakfast, and they had brought people. It was an international prayer breakfast, so there were people from like all over the world there.
Yes.
And I went, and I'm looking and talking to people, and what blew my mind was that you had people from Africa, France, Italy, America, all these different people, and the one common language that everybody spoke was French. And so so I'm all enthralled in this, and I write my story and stuff. And they basically cut that story down to when, where, who, how, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm like, really? Because then you had to fit so, you know, if you ever see a newspaper, you'll have story go like this, and then it's continued on the next page. Or you have you know, you have these little kind of geographic things, so I can only fit in so much space.
Okay.
And I wrote a couple of other things for them, and they kept cutting them. But then I would send them to Frost when we had
Frost Illustrated, yes.
Frost Illustrated, African American newspaper, and they would print everything. And so I saw right there that I didn't like them cutting my stuff. So I said, I'm not going into journalism. And I realized I had been writing poetry since the 4th grade. My mother, my memory goes to the first poem I wrote was with help from my mother for Black History Month. I wrote a poem about Jackie Robinson.
Okay.
And I kind of was writing poetry throughout my life up until that point. And so I had poems here and there. And I just started getting so I was kind of getting 2 educations. I was on the Black arts, Black Renaissance stuff that I was doing, and then when I got into college, I started getting into more American contemporary poetry and surrealism on the French and the Spanish sides and stuff like that. So I have a mixture of all that. And once I started doing poetry and reading more poetry, just it's like, this is what I should have been doing forever.
Do you have a favorite poem?
No.
That's probably hard to, to ask a poet that.
It's kind of like, it's usually,
other than your own.
Yeah, it's usually like the next poem, because I have this thing, so say I write a book and I finish the manuscript before it gets published or anything, and I finish the manuscript, and I kind of feel it's weird because I feel like I gave birth to it. And I've told you all this in class, when it becomes a book, it's 18 now and it's going out into the world, and I have no control of it. I've done everything I need to do to make it to make it grow, and now I have no control over how people like or dislike or feel about it.
Right.
But I kind of feel like I have this thing where, will I ever be able to write something again? And it's fleeting, because what you have are these poems that kind of teeter out on whatever it is that you're writing, and then other stuff will start coming.
Right.
But it's, for me, I always feel like I'm never going to be able to write anything like that I just did.
The previous piece.
But stuff, if you magnify the minute, like I say, stuff comes to you. If you're open to poetry, poetry will come to you.
Yes. Now, our introduction is through PFW, Purdue Fort Wayne, formerly IPFW. I know that I saw you, this is years ago, 15 plus years ago, and I was impressed to see an African-American man on campus.
I remember you saying that.
And then in the English department, because I've told you I love English, and I finally took your class, not too long ago, I'd say over a year ago or whatever. In my intro, I talked about, you teaching, being a professor at PFW. How long have you worked at PFW?
Officially 17 years, something like that. I came back in 2004, but they don't count, for some reason they don't count when you're an adjunct in that aspect. So I think I just got something like, I don't know, I got a 15-year or 12-year something for, being a teacher that long. But I think it was 15 years. But officially it's been 17 years. I was an adjunct, and then I got hired as an adjunct, which is limited term lecturer, part-time.
Okay.
And in that first year, they put up Dr. Calamar's, a friend, teacher, peer, all that of mine, former Indiana Poet Laureate. He was going on sabbatical, so I put in to fill in for that year, and I got it. And so the first year I was limited term lecturer. The second year I was visiting for that. Then I went back to limited term lecturer. Okay. And then within that year, they put me on visiting. And in that first year of visiting, they put me on faculty. Okay. And so it was weird. I was going back and forth, but I was just being in the right place at the right time.
Okay.
And kind of being patient. Because with English, with the jobs, you tend to have to go to where the job is. It's not, you have some people who want to teach creative writing and that type of thing, be it poetry, fiction, drama, graphic novels in some places, but they may not have that at PFW. They may not have that at IUPUI or Bloomington or Purdue. So you'll have to go to where they have it, and then the job that you're going to get, you may have to go to that as well.
And sir, are you the only African American man in that, or only African American in that department?
In my department, I am the only on faculty. Yes.
Yes.
And I think I am the only full professor. African American full professor. I don't think, because Quentin Dixie left and he went to Duke Divinity School, and I don't know if anyone, unless they've hired somebody recently in the last year or so, that's a full-time African American person on faculty.
Yeah.
So it's 2021, and
yeah,
I'm the only
because
one.
my history with PFW goes back a long time.
Yeah.
And I had, some great instructors, Carol Durr,
Yeah.
Beverly Hume, yourself. But I was impressed when I met you to see an African American, and who could teach it, from an African American perspective.
Yes.
And so, very interesting. Can you list some of the courses you teach?
I teach an abundance of courses, but lately I've been able to create courses. And so since I've moved up, I'm not teaching those entry courses like I used to, but taught like 131 intro to I don't even know.
Was that expository?
Expository writing.
I took that.
Yeah, everybody has to take that unless you test out. I used to take some of the classes that like back when it was IPFW back in the day, they had P111 and P115 and P116 and stuff like that. And these were prerequisites. These were classes that people needed to take to get up to the 130, 131 level. So if you weren't proficient in being able to write, these are those classes that helped you in that to get you to the proficiency that you need to be. So, but now I'm teaching fiction, 203 fiction, 303, 301 fiction, 401 fiction, creative nonfiction. I've created classes. I just changed the name of the class in this. I'm trying to think how to beat death. Finding poetry to make you live, or something of that nature.
Okay.
And what we do in that class is I actually have them search and find poetry on campus. They go to bathrooms. They go to surge areas and listen to other people. I have them go to a surge area, look out the window, the first thing that you see that's moving, write about. I have them go to the surge area, look out the window, notice the reflection of yourself in the window, and what does write about that. So I have them doing these crazy kind of things, and it's a performance class because the reason I changed the name to Beating Death, because still today people fear public speaking over death. So it's like, I would rather die, that's number one, than public speak, which is number two. It's like, really? You'd rather,
Right.
And so this class, so they find the poems and all that stuff, and we talk about them, and then we address putting them in, having them recite them, memorize them. So by the end, they're doing an individual single poem and a group poem in front of the class.
Nice.
And it's really cool to see, because I had this one guy, and the dude was so talented. He played guitar and he sang and stuff like that, but we didn't know it until it got to and he was just so introverted. So you can sit down and have a good conversation with him and everything, but he wasn't like giving of his creative talents and stuff until we got to see him. He was a soldier and all this stuff.
Oh, wow.
He played for like the vets and all that. And it was just a great. One girl was dancing, had people jumping up on desk and all that stuff. So we try to get that big room, 136 on the by the elevator when you come up that big room, so that if you're doing stuff, you have room to move.
Yes.
And stuff.
This is an upper level class, I presume.
This is, I think I moved it to 400 level class.
Okay, is this restricted to majors, English majors, or is this open to?
No, I think it's open to every. Yeah, it should be open. Yeah, this is not a grad class for just English majors. It would be open because it's a hybrid. So it's like I can have 10 undergrads and 5 grad students.
Okay. I've always wanted to ask a professor, you have those courses, as you mentioned, you have to teach entry level and then the 200 level, for undergraduates, but then you have the courses that students take for their majors, and you all are masters at this. So do you prefer teaching those courses or like the entry level and where some students really don't care about English, but they have to take it, it's a requirement?
I think I like both of them. I think because I learn from the students just like they're learning from me. And I think in the 200 like the 100, 200 level, like we have a class 103, W10302, since we were in Purdue, Fort Wayne, now we have 5 numbers instead of 3 numbers.
I hate that.
I know.
I hate that.
And I still use the 3 numbers.
Me too.
But that we have an introduction to creative writing. And so that class, I teach poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction in that semester, so I split it up. When you get to the 200 level, which is more like a sophomore class, those, it splits up to poetry and fiction. So you're like the class that you have with me, that's like the first fiction class for, where it's just fiction.
Okay.
And then there's a 300, 400 level and grad classes as well. So I like both of them. The thing about the ones that are more, when you get to like 300, 400, 500 level, that kind of thing, you're getting people who are more adept to what it is that they're doing with the writing, and they write outside of class. Where in the 100, 200 level class, you may be getting people who have considered writing, may have wrote back when they were in high school and want to get back to it, that kind of thing. And so there's some debunking of what poetry is. There's some debunking of what fiction is. In the sense, for example, fiction is a tale, a story that's made up, basically. And but a lot of people think fiction is sci-fi. Fiction is gothic. Fiction, and those are genres within fiction.
That's right.
So you can write about Gothic, Southern Gothic, European Gothic, whatever it is, but that's just kind of navigating thematically where this falls.
Yes.
But you're writing fiction about what this is.
Yes.
And because some people, you get a lot of our Indiana students, especially the ones that come from farms and stuff like that, is interesting. A lot of them like dragons. A lot of them like magic. A lot of them like that kind of stuff. So Harry Potter and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
They're really into that kind of stuff.
I think about the course 203, the fiction class that I took, and I told you that I'd written, prior to your class, and I enjoy writing, but I just didn't have an appreciation for fiction until after I taught your class. You teaching us, what a protagonist and an antagonist, and I had heard of those words, those terms, but I just didn't respect them. And, I taught your class and you told me, no, you have to use them. They're central to the story. And I began to really enjoy fiction writing and had to write, pieces. And they had to come up from memory. And I, really enjoy that course. And so.
And the thing is, people think, it's funny when you teach English. So even if you're teaching like grammar or whatever it is you're teaching about English, since we all speaking English, people are like, what am I going to learn here? And it's the only, I feel it's like it's the only class people, not the only one, but the only one I can think of where people come to the class having knowledge about it and not thinking I'm going to learn something from it, in the sense that if you go to a math class or you go to a Spanish or Arabic class, you're like, okay, I will be learning these things. They're going to teach me these things. Right. When they come to English, I know English. What are they going to teach me? And so you have that that kind of thing. And so my thing is not to discredit what you know. My thing is to show you what's there and what's out there and how people are looking at this.
Yes.
And so what is the the 4 things I have on at the top of your paper, or the 5 things? My name, what draft this is.
Yes.
And then I have protag, antag,
yes.
point of view, intent.
Yes. Yes.
Because if you don't have those 4 things, what are you doing with the story?
Right.
So you have to,
I learned that, and
Yeah.
I did learn that. Let's talk about your book. One of your books of poetry, Sir, Tough Boy Sonatas. I find this body of work, it's fascinating.
Thank you.
How did this literary art work come about?
Well, actually, that's my thesis for grad school.
Okay.
And when the coolest thing about grad school was that it was the first time I was in a place to where I can go to school and just be in school without thinking about. I still had exterior things around me, but where I was teaching was at school. Where I was taking my class, you had to take 2 classes and teach 2 classes as a GA. So I was in school for all that, but I was making enough money to where I can take care of my bills and stuff like that I brought with me. And for the most part, I did have loans and stuff, but I was in a place to where I can just focus on my writing. And it got so intense that I remember telling one of my teachers, Rodney Jones, I was like, Rodney, I've been writing for like the last couple of days and haven't been able to sleep. I've just been writing. And he's like, and all writers have this thing. No matter, we make whatever it is, as long as you write, it gets you to the page to write. That's the inevitable thing about it. I got a divorce. Oh, but I wrote a poem and got a poem out of it. We're crazy. So I told him, I haven't been sleeping. I just been writing. He's like, that's good because you want to write. And I remember grabbing him by his lapels and like, but I haven't had any sleep, right? He's like, okay, all right, okay. It's gonna be but so I was able to, something clicked and took me back to the transition from living in the projects to moving to the suburbs.
Yes.
And it was kind of like the Leroy poem is. Yes. I was fighting on which should be the first poem, Leroy or Chocolate City. Then in the aspect of the layout, Leroy gets moved down. So they think this book is about all these different boys, and it's not. It's about Leroy and Leroy's envisioning of where he was with different boys and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, but since Leroy's poem gets moved down from being second, because I was fussing over the Gary poem and the Leroy poem. I felt I had to have the Gary poem to establish the preface of the book, and then having Leroy after that, I thought they would get that Leroy would be, and the layout, when Helen does the layout, that poem gets moved down for certain reasons, and then Floyd has to have the visuals in there, and so things are laid out. It's a cool process to undergo. Yes. But yeah, I just connected with that, and then all these memories are coming up about like my mother, my sister, people I knew, just running. I think I was getting to the point, like I said, we moved out when I was going to middle school, and so I got out at a time. And I'm not saying the way I wrote the poem, it makes it seem like my mother saw me getting enthralled in the lifestyle that was there, and she had to get us out. And so that was that's in there, but I can't say that's her reason for doing that. Okay. Yeah. So all these things like that were coming up. Yes. Going to church. Yes. When we were little. Yes. All the being feeling like you were on the Serengeti and it was a dog-eat-dog kind of lifestyle. There were pure, beautiful moments in the projects, and they were pure, fascinating, hateful, unorthodox moments in the projects too.
Yes.
Because the one where, like I said, I went, seeing my friend's house, their house burning, and his sister running out of the house, and her nightgown, and the fire is, it was like, that was just a happenstance.
Yes, yes. And when you talk about Leroy and Sister Sundays, that's one of my favorite poems.
Yeah.
Going to you in the poem, describe going to church with your sister and then getting to church, and you protecting her, and she's kind of like sitting at a table, and you watching her. It resonated with me. A lot of my youth, was spent at church, and my sister wasn't born until I was a little much older, but you just have a way with words, sir.
Oh, thank you.
The reader, it was like I was there on the bus with you guys and at church, and so and that was going to be my next question, or is it autobiographical? But you said that it's based.
Yeah, I say it's 90% autobiographical and 10% word magic. And what I wanted to do when because I wrote that book, the way it was done is how we see it in Hollywood, and how it worked out. Like, it was amazing how it worked out. None of the other books ever worked out like that. But I did have that one time where it did work out. I wanted it to be a full book, because you have to defend your thesis at the end. So you have a committee and a committee chair, and you go and they hit you with these questions about the book, about the manuscript and all that stuff. And you have your peers around there, so other people in grad school, they can come, it's open, so they can come and see what because they're going to have to do it too, so they can get a feel of it. And so I had finished it basically in the first year and a half. It was a 3-year program.
Okay.
And I thought I could, I was like, well, can I do this to get out early? And they're like, no, it's a 3-year program. You don't have your thesis hours until the 3rd year. I was like, okay. So for the other year and a half, I was just fine tuning it. So I I got to the point, if I don't know what this is about by the time when I do my defense, then what have I been doing for this 3 years?
Yes.
So I was really, it went easy for me, because I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a badass, really, and I wanted to have the book published and kind of like throw it on a table, and like, now what?
Yes.
But that didn't happen. That did happen to my friend the next year, Michael Meyerhofer, who is a really great writer. And I had a lot of the poems in there published, but it's a weird book because it's a YA book, a young adult book, but all like the poems have been published in more academic and professional magazines.
Yes. So is this book your first published book of poetry?
No.
Okay.
No, it's I had a chapbook, 2 chapbooks, I think, published.
Okay.
And I self-published a terrible book back in the 80s. There was a guy that was a publisher out of New Haven, and I had this book.
What was the name of the book, that first book? Do you remember?
Black Man's Mind Part 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting, Professor Crisler, to read. I'd like to read that.
And some people, it was terrible. But
was that based off of where you were in your life? Okay.
It was. There were some poems I took from there and worked them to where I could use them.
Okay.
Overall, it was. I had a friend, Jency Churchill, who she did the artwork. For the book and stuff like that, and then I had to pay this Jewish guy, because back then when you're getting a book made, the one that costs the most is the first book, because they have to take it from the manuscript, and if it's going to be in a 5x9 or however big the book is going to be, they have to do all that stuff. And so, yeah, it was. That book was such a...
How did you feel, sir, though, let the readers know, how did you feel when you had that, those thoughts and words in your hand in book form? How did that make you feel?
So just like I said at the end, and this is what where I was saying, when I finish a book and I feel I'm not going to write anymore and all this stuff. So when the book is published, they send you so many copies. So you get so many copies. And so when I get that box and I open it up and I see my child who's 18 about to go out into the world, and I'm like, wow. And then I'm like, wow, everybody's going to know about my child and me and stuff. And so it hits me. And still to this day, it's still a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling to have that. And a lot of people say, oh, this is the new kid on the block now. And so we have that new kid on the block out there. But I'm trying to, and people, it's, Boys Mills Press has been taken over by someone else. And so I'm trying, but they took it out of rotation, so it's not in rotation anymore. I only have so many copies, but I want to get it reprinted.
I would love to, sir, that first book. I would love to get in your headspace and see, because I've taken your class and I've known.
I'm in for Tough Boy Sonatas.
Okay.
Yeah, but for the other one, I don't. Yeah, that would be. It would be interesting.
Yes, it would be.
I think I just have one, and I've written all in it and stuff like that. But some people had it. I sold all the copies I had. And stuff,
and maybe that would be a good, a good book for you to pull out in one of your intro classes or one of the intro upper level to show writers, aspiring writers.
Do not self-publish. Yeah. No, but some people self-publish and they do well. Yusef Komunyakaa self-published, and he was the Pulitzer Prize winner.
Okay.
And, but he's damn good too.
Okay.
It's I think a lot of times people want a book. They want to say, I wrote this book.
Yeah.
And they have their name on it and all that. Yeah. But a lot of times people come to me and they're talking about publishing, and I can't get past the first page because it is so. It's not that I don't. Sometimes I don't even know what the book is about because of the grammar, the misspellings, the lack. The thing that when a book comes together, when a poem comes together, when a short piece comes together, it's usually through revision, and a lot of times people are rushing that. They're not revising enough so that the reader can conceptualize. Like I was talking about, I want to be in those pictures because the writing was good enough to make you want to be with Dick and Jane and throwing snowballs and stuff like that. Or to be with Huck and that kind of thing. And it's not, a lot of them are just writing and they don't want to do the work.
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing. The class when we were that you were in, a lot of people found, because you had the one, your partner David. David was meticulous on taking notes and wanting to understand why people are doing what they want to do, and I love that about him. But then you still had to write and concept and how do you get that onto the page?
Yes.
Yeah. And let your.
And he actually has a degree in English, a bachelor's degree. And I would always say, what are you still doing? Unless you're working on a master's, but you could be teaching classes here. Yeah, I would tell him that, because I'd worked with him, somewhere here in Fort Wayne. And, we would talk about, and I'm like, when we had the class, and he was kind of like your assistant,
Brilliant.
Giving off advice and gave me a good book on Andy Warhol that I still haven't read yet. But I mean, he just had that knowledge as you
Yeah,
do. And
yeah.
it's like, Dave, you could be teaching the class. You graduated from here 40 years ago. You could be,
And
you know.
I think he's just reluctant to put his foot out there and do something with it because he still asks, it's like he's still asking those questions about things.
Uh-huh.
And I think the one thing in life that a lot of us do is, I remember seeing the guy that does Famous Amos Cookies.
Okay.
And it was like the first infomercial. It was him, the guy for Suntan, California Tan, and there was another one. And and they were asking him what are some of the problems with people starting their own business. And he said, some people just need to start. They do all the research, and they research and research and over-research, and they never start.
Yeah.
And he says, sometimes you got to start, and it's not until you start do you learn, okay, I can't do this, or I can do more of this, or whatever.
Right.
So you have to, I think that's where David is. He just needs to put his foot in the water and see what is out there, and then he can adjust, manipulate, and adapt to whatever comes.
He would have been really helpful at the writing center, had it been open. Okay, sir. So outside of writing poetry and teaching, let our viewers know the hobbies that you partake of.
I used to be big into basketball, and then I tore my Achilles, so I can't do that anymore. I can't run anymore. So those two, I've stopped doing that. That sucks. And I used to dance.
Dancing? What kind of?
I had a hip hop group.
Oh, okay.
And we were doing.
I thought you were going to say ballroom dancing or something like that, sir.
But stepping, there was two different types of stepping. You have the ones now. There used to be three different types of stepping. The ones now you have are stepping like if you're in a frat or sorority.
Yes. I'm familiar with that.
Greek stepping, but then the stepping like that comes out of Chicago that used to be the bop that moved into stepping, and you hear like R. Kelly's "Step in the Name of Love" and stuff like that. That's a different type of stepping. And in the 80s, that kind of stepping and another type of stepping was done that was kind of like more aggressive, where you can have guy, girl, two guys, two girls, whatever, and you stepped to, both of those steppings come kind of from the bop, but the more aggressive one was with hip hop, and you stepped off James Brown, you stepped off anything that had to, Run DMC had this one. It's just like stepping was just, that type of stepping was aggressive. Okay. And it's kind of like when the moshing was happening with rock and roll and stuff like that.
Yes.
And so it was different than what you have with the Chicago stepping now, because it's more, Chicago stepping is more smooth and stuff. But like if you go back to Dick Clark Bandstand, you would see them doing the bop and stuff like that. Or if you see those old like 60 crooners and stuff like that, Smokey Robinson and stuff like that, your mother and parents did the bop. And so the bop leads to stepping, and stepping now it's kind of like a moderate song. It's not too fast. It has to have a beat, but you could step a lot of James Brown stuff, a lot of what's his name, Frankie Beverly, and stuff like that.
I was familiar more with the Greek, with the fraternity and sororities, and
that's more physical too than the other one, because when the Chicago step, like bop and stepping comes, I would say, from like I'm thinking of the stuff in the 40s when they're
the Lindy or those dances,
like Lindy hopping and stuff like that, and then it moves into the bop.
Very physical dancing.
So it's physical, but
people jumping over each other's heads.
So I used to do that, but now I'm most of the stuff I'm doing has to do with cooking,
Okay.
reading, working, doing a lot of things with people. The
Okay.
last book I did was with one of my friends from SIU. We went to SIU together.
Okay.
Kevin McKelvey, and he's at the University of Indianapolis, and we wrote this book, Indiana Nocturnes.
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
it's kind of like City Mouse, Country Mouse come together.
Okay.
And it's City Hoosier, Country Hoosier, and we had this book addressing that and that what does being a Hoosier mean in a sense.
Okay.
And a lot the interest that people have been talking about it, I find it really interesting because we have this. It's 5 parts, and the first part is like 10 poems, Kevin, me, Kevin, me, Kevin, me. Then we have a slide out, kind of like the Temptations when they slid out and did their solo. And so there'll be 10 poems by me, then it's Kevin, me, Kevin, me, Kevin, me, then Kevin has a slide out, then it's Kevin, me, Kevin, you know. And so it's really interesting aspect. So I do a lot of collaboration stuff too.
And you told me prior or previously about Blue Apron. You cooking through what's Blue Apron?
It's kind of like I'm trying to think of the other things that they have where they send the food to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a food service thing.
Oh,
and they were there before, like some of the new
these newer
new ones there, and they've changed because I think when I first got on it, they would only have like 3 or 4 choices. Now they have up to like 10 choices, and you can substitute and do all these things. So
they're sending you, sir, produce or something?
And anything you want. So you can. So for next month, well, they do it weekly. So for next week, they will have like 10 things you can choose from, and it's going to be pork, beef, chicken, shrimp.
Okay.
Tofu, whatever, you know, you can you can choose like if you're vegan or vegetarian.
Okay.
You can address that, and then they're going to just send you that kind of stuff, and you get to choose between that.
That's interesting.
But they send a box. Usually comes on Friday, and you can get like enough for 2 people, so you can get to cook 2 meals.
Okay.
Or you can get like you get 4 people, and I think they have family.
Okay. Okay.
So I've been doing. At the beginning of the summer, I was killing it. I just so I was they Mediterranean, Japanese.
Okay.
There's all kind of stuff.
Interesting. Interesting.
You're getting stuff that you probably couldn't find in some of the Japanese stores and stuff that we have here, because some of the stuff is like, you know, truffle oils and stuff like that and stuff.
Okay.
You know, some of the stuff is really specific.
Okay, and lastly, sir, I know people know you. Some people know you not as a professor or poet, but spoken word. You know, you're within that local scene of spoken word here in Fort Wayne. Because of the pandemic, a lot of those performances have been put on hold.
Yes.
Do you know when that's going to start up again?
I don't. I know Wonder Calmer does stuff. I haven't. I think they're still, because the pandemic is still going on, and so I haven't heard George talk about anything at the co-op. Co-op is first Friday, so first Friday of every month that happens. I don't know if he'll be opening that up in the fall or not, but I've been waiting to hear from people. The stuff I've been doing has all been online, on Zooms and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, be they Kavi Kanum, we did the 25th anniversary stuff that was all online.
Okay.
The last readings I have done have all been on Zooms. So people they're not as ready for to be. But I'm assuming fall is going to, depending on where we are by come August, September, hopefully going into October, that we'll be in a place to where we're seeing stuff at Wonder Calmer, the co-op, and like at PFW, because I have the student reading series, faculty student reading series.
Okay.
I haven't done that since the spring of 2020. So that's unusual, because I usually at least do the students, so that like you could, like when we had class in the fall, you all would have been able to read at at the thing, and so, but we didn't have it because we couldn't get together. I was thinking about doing it online, but I don't know. So I'm trying to set it up to where hopefully we can do that in this fall.
Okay. Well, to all my Reflections viewers, you all see how knowledgeable this man is. I encourage you, if you're thinking about going back to college, to look for him.
Yes.
He teaches English at PFW, and I encourage all of you to read Tough Boy Sonatas. It's available online. You can find out information online, and also Indiana Nocturnes. And I thank you so much, Professor Crisler, for granting me this interview.
Thank you for having me.
I've known you for quite a while, and we've had conversations here and there, but it has been my pleasure, sir, to sit down and talk with you today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.